Alright. We're taking all the best old school wisdom and blending it with the top new school methods to bring you the optimal coaching strategies. This is the 80-20 Baseball Podcast with Coach Bo.
Welcome, everyone. Great to be here with you this week. I love this time of year. Baseball, playoffs, Halloween, Thanksgiving. In this episode, we have part 3 of our great interview with Coach Adam Sarancik. Part 3, it may be the best of the 3 parts. It's really good. Before we get into part 3 of the interview with Coach Sarancik, I am going to share out an 80-20 principle example that I've been using over the past month and have had good success with. And I've used this before with many teams, but I'm using it with my own kid. And I wanted to share it out here because it's something we can all use. And it's something I wish I knew a long time ago when I first started coaching. So a specific example of the 80-20 principle in action when it comes to coaching. But first, I want to hit on a couple things here. I was watching a coaching video from the American Baseball Coaches Association annual conference this past January. And what I try to do the digging for you, the reading, the watching, the listening, and then the vetting, the filtering, and then the prioritizing, then the optimizing of all these strategies that are out there in the coaching world, the youth baseball coaching world, and just baseball coaching in general. Try to save you a lot of time. I try to do the digging, the research on top of the decades that I've coached and played. Really try hard to save you time on the front end and also on the back end, streamlining the collection and the implementation of your coaching plan and processes. And so I was listening to a manager who I believe was the first professional female manager, Rachel Balkovec. And I hope I'm saying Rachel's last name right, Balkovec. Pretty cool last name. Some of you might be familiar with her story. She was hired to be a minor league manager in the Yankees organization. So anyways, I'm not really big on titles. And also, I'm not really big on how a manager looks or doesn't look. All I care is that they're great with their players. They're great at what they do. And then I want to learn from them. But I've been following Coach Balkovec's story, and Rachel seems like an intriguing follow, blazing a trail. And I was very impressed with her speech, her discussion points at the conference. And I watched the video. And the thing that stood out the most was at the very end of her talk. It's about a 40-minute talk, 35-minute talk. And at the end of the video, she said if she could go back and do anything over from her first year of being a manager, if she could do one thing over her first year of being a manager, she said, quote, "I would have created more clarity surrounding standards/rules from the very beginning. And I would have created consequences and rewards immediately," end quote. Then she doubled down on that comment by saying she should have done a better job of creating insanely clear standards. These are her words: insanely clear standards and insanely clear pathways to meet those standards, synonym for rules or expectations. First off, I love how she pointed out what she wanted to get better at. She put her ego aside. That's great to see. It's great to see from a coach. Her speech was really good. I liked what she said. I didn't agree with all of it, and it wasn't that I disagreed. There was a couple things I didn't think she traced back to the root cause or the root reasons. And something that's happened with my mindset paradigm, and I think probably a lot of you, that's why you're drawn to this podcast, is you really want the root. You obviously want the 80-20 approach. You want the big needle movers. You want to know those. You want to know how to implement those efficiently and effectively. But the 80-20 rule, the 80-20 principle is rooted in understanding the root causes of things and the results or the impact or the outcomes that come from those. The 80-20 rule can't be used effectively or even fairly effectively if we don't start with the root inputs, the root reasons that the 80% of the results that come out of those 20% of inputs happens. But that's neither here nor there in this message. I was very impressed, very well spoken, and I love the part where she came out and said, "Hey, I want to leave you with one thing. This is what I would have done better. I would have," and she said in her words, "I would have created much more clarity, or I would have created more clarity surrounding the standards from the very beginning. I would have had created consequences and rewards immediately." Then she doubled down by saying she should have done a better job of setting insanely clear standards and insanely clear pathways to those standards. The word transparency is thrown around a lot these days. Transparency, you got to be transparent, especially in the sports world, coaches. Transparency, we need to be transparent. Well, transparency is an abstract, right? It's not the thing that actually takes place. What's the action, or how does transparency look? What are the actions that create this term, transparency. Insanely clear standards and expectations. Upfront, early, from the get-go, and often. Now, don't confuse this with getting long-winded with your rules and standards and all that. Don't get long-winded. You're not trying to oversell anything. You're just very clear, concise, but very clear with your rules, your standards, your expectations of the team. Now, I love to blend this message with a nice balance. When I set forth these, when I put them out there, when I lay them out there, I've been able to blend the message of, hey, I care about you. This is about you. I'm here for you. I'm here to be friendly, but not your friend. I tell players, students, they're the reason that I love my job, or they're the reason I love being a coach. So if you just come across with standards and rules and standards and rules and expectations and rules, you got to blend that message of tough love. And that to me is very clear standards. And then obviously firm with those and upholding those throughout the year consistently, throughout the season consistently. It helps if you don't have too many of them. And it helps if you have some tiered consequences. That always helps keep those consistent, or it helps us as coaches when it comes to actually having to enforce them. But blend the message of clear standards, expectations with a clear message of caring, a clear message of you're there for them and that they're important, that being your players. Now, moving to the second of three things I wanted to hit on before we dive into part 3 of our interview with Coach Sarancik, Moneyball. Moneyball, when it came out, was a book that I actually enjoyed reading. It was one of the first books I enjoyed reading. I don't think I finished a book until my senior year of college. Wasn't a big reader of books. I read every Sports Illustrated from about 1991 through about 2001. I read every Sports Illustrated for kids. How many of you remember that one? I read the sports section, 2 of them, the LA Times and the Orange County Register, every morning, but I didn't actually pick up a book and read it myself until I got a lot older, but reading a lot now. And Moneyball was one of those books that got me interested in reading because it was very interesting. It expanded how I looked at the game of baseball, kind of that, hey, there may be a better way to do some of this stuff. Now, my point here is Moneyball was and is all about, at the time at least, and even now, really Moneyball, the idea of Moneyball, that book by Michael Lewis that was centered around the Oakland A's and Billy Beane, early 2000s. It was about front office evaluation of players. So it was about player arbitrage, underappreciated value, etc. Like, i.e., looking at the game differently so they can have more success, so those teams can have more success spending less money because they're not necessarily stuck to how it's always been done. Now, the ideas behind Moneyball were not necessarily Sandy Alderson or Billy Beane's ideas with the A's to start off with. Bill James was a big influence on that. Some of you have heard of Bill James. Branch Rickey, way back into the 50s, 40s, was keeping stats that resembled some of these stats that we now appreciate more. He was valuing them a lot. He was ahead of his game. I mean, he brought Jackie Robinson into the game. So Moneyball was about front office evaluation, player arbitrage, underappreciated value. What we're trying to do here, as most of you have picked up on, we are trying to be the Moneyball of youth baseball coaching, but not like MLB teams, which use Moneyball strategies for acquiring better players for better prices. Here at 80/20 Baseball, we're thinking for ourselves. We're thinking ahead, not backward, and implementing a holistic coaching plan that I believe is ahead of the game. If you follow the 80/20 plan, hopefully you are, all you coaches that have emailed me that are following it are having a lot of success. It works. I know it works. These are tried and true methods that in a way have just been curated and compiled from massively successful coaches of all levels from the past and then optimized and improved. So we're trying to be forward thinkers. We're trying to be ahead of the coaching game, in some ways just slightly, but in other ways substantially. And it all adds up to helping our players way more than the alternatives. So I saw the book Moneyball a couple days ago. It got me thinking, it really kind of sparked my thinking. It got me thinking about the game differently. And I can't stress this enough. It's so important that we don't try to just be different, just to be different. And I think that's a real challenge. The first challenge is don't be stuck in your ways. And when somebody asks you why you do it a certain way, the answer should never be because that's how I've always done it. But don't be the person that's always trying to come up with completely different ways to do things. I first always look at what's already been done successfully with many coaches at the youth level or different levels, and then use first principles to fine tune it to make it even better. An example, that's the 80/20 hitting approach. Speaking of the 80/20, an 80/20 principle or an example of the 80/20 principle, the 80/20 rule that I've been using over the last month, 6 weeks, is with my kid. And she's playing soccer and just youth soccer. There's a practice a week and a game on the weekend. And so she's been playing for a couple years. And last year was her first year of playing games. And I'm not a soccer coach, but I understand the 80-20 principle very well, of course. And I used it to kind of assess the first season that she played. And so in a nutshell, at the end of the season, I just said, what is the one thing that not just my kid, but all the kids could do better that they don't do very well at her age in these games? What's the one thing that could increase her success or their success the most on offense? Then I asked the same question. What's the one thing they could do on defense, whether that's goalie or being a defender? And so this is the lens that I'm looking at the game through all last season. So of course, this season rolls around mid-September, and I put out the soccer goals in the backyard in August, late August, and I don't push it on my daughter to go out there and play. She's like, hey, Dad, let's go play some soccer. Okay, let's go. Let her do some things. And then I told her, I said, hey, you want to know the one thing that all you players could do better to score more goals? The one thing that the kids at your age don't do very well that can help you score more goals? She said, yeah, what's that? And I said, don't dribble the ball all the way to the goal. In other words, don't feel like you need to get close to the goal to score. You can score a goal from 20 feet back, from 15 feet back. You don't need to get 4 feet from the goal. I saw all the kids, it was almost like they all thought that they had to get really close to the goal and then score. So I just said, hey, you get 10 feet away, and if it's time to kick it, you kick it. And then I added, I said, kick it down the middle. Just aim down the middle. And then if you do kick it to the side of your foot, you're going to end up scoring. Just make the goalie stop it. Don't miss the goal. I always think that's a big one with soccer. If I was coaching advanced soccer, I would coach PKs this way. I would say, whatever you do, don't miss the goal. If they block it, but don't miss the goal. Because you cannot score, right, of course, if you miss the goal. It's like walks in baseball. If you're a pitcher, you can't defend a walk, and you can't score a goal that doesn't go within the uprights or the crossbar. So I said, hey, I just said, be quick with your shot. Once you get close, just shoot it quick. Just shoot it quick. Because I'd see a lot of them feel like they needed to dribble up real close. See a lot of them kind of take their time and set up for a kick. Well, by then somebody else kicks the ball away, or they get into a little scrum, and then it's just a kicking fest, and they're kicking each other's shin guards. So I said, hey, I'm going to time you. How fast can you dribble the soccer ball across the grass in the backyard and score? I'm a huge stopwatch fan. Y'all know I am. I've used this with baseball teams for years. Love it. And I said, hey, I'm going to give you 6 seconds to dribble across the grass and score the goal. And she did it. She did it a couple times. I said, all right, let's go 5 seconds. Well, it forced two things. One, it forced her not to want to set up, get her feet in the right position. You don't have time for that in a game. The ball's going to be kicked away, or somebody's going to come in front of you and block it. So it forced her to dribble quick and shoot quick. Also made her want to kick the ball from a little further out. Well, she's scoring a lot more goals than everybody else. And of course, it's not all about scoring goals, but kids need to have some success. Success is not a bad thing in terms of enjoying the sport. Definitely not the thing we want to build a foundation on and the thing we want to anchor everything to. We don't want to anchor the youth sports ship to winning. But if you can teach them one thing at the plate, one thing as a pitcher, one thing as an infielder, one thing as a base runner, what's the thing that can make the biggest difference? And just remember, in the games, they're not going to have time to go through a checklist. When she gets the ball and she's dribbling it, if she doesn't have a shot, she knows to pass. If there's nobody in front of her, it's dribble, dribble, shoot. Dribble, 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 shoot. And she's scoring a ton of goals. Now, the caveat to that would be coaching up a kid to pass the ball when the ball needs to be passed. So that's kind of the next step. So it didn't come up in the last couple of games. And thankfully, my kid's fine with sharing. In fact, she probably wants to pass it more than she should. But that's okay. You can work from there. Definitely want that team work, that being a good teammate to come out. So then on defense, she likes to play goalie. So I told her, the one thing goalies could do that they don't do hardly at all. In fact, I didn't see any goalies in her games in the league, the group of games that were going on last year. I didn't see any of the goalies ever come out and meet the ball handler. They didn't come out and meet the offensive player. But when the kids are 6 years old, 5 years old, they're not the best dribblers. You all know that, right? They kick the ball, it gets out too far in front of them. They're not messy. They don't keep the ball on their foot the whole time. So I said, hey, you know what? If somebody's coming down and it's a breakaway or fast break, I told her the first thing you should think of is, can I come out and get that ball? Because they're likely going to kick the ball too far on one of those dribbles. One of those last couple dribbles, they're going to kick it a little too far and you can snag it. Or you can kick it away. And guess what? Now she's doing that. And the kids don't get that kick because what they want to do, like I alluded to coaching her up on offense, is most of the kids want to dribble right to the goal and then shoot. They want to shoot right in front of the goal. Well, Usually there's a dribble that comes towards the end, and if they kick it 6, 7, 8 feet out in front of them, boom, there's your ball. Grab it, kick it away. So I don't coach her up on other things. There's multiple things that you could fix. There's 3 or 4 things I could have pointed out, but I stayed disciplined about it. And I said, hey, here's the one thing you can do. Now, other than that, I always just say, hey, you did great. I'm proud of you. I love your effort. When these games are done, I don't get into the schematics of it and the strategy. It's really, did you have fun? That was awesome. What a good time. What a beautiful day. I really had fun watching you play. Now, the next time we're in the backyard, whenever she wants, if she doesn't ask me for about a week, I'll recommend, hey, you want to go out just to get outside, right? Avoid that screen time, if anything, and then we'll hit those things. I love the stopwatch, and she loves it. Hey, you got 5 seconds. And I do different things. I also, hey, let's put the ball back here and see if you can kick it in the goal from there. And she was surprised. She was kicking it from like 30 feet. I mean, it's not a crazy amount, but she's sick. But she was surprised, like, oh, I can score from this distance. And I'm like, man, the games, this is probably too far, but at least you know that you don't need to be right in front of the goal. She likes that. We do other things, make it fun, try to have fun with it. But she loves the stopwatch. She asked me to time her. Kids love to be timed. They love a stopwatch. I used this for years in baseball. Want to put some pressure on them? Stopwatch. Want to speed them up? Stopwatch. Want to make it more game-like? Stopwatch. Because you know what they call the stopwatch in a game? The other team's base runners. They're the stopwatch. And you're going to hear something about that today by Coach Sarancik. You're going to hear about that in just a second. He's going to talk about when you set up a drill, how fast he wants his infielders to finish a play, and his outfielders. He's going to give 2 specific times in seconds that he expects his outfielders to get the ball to a certain base or his infielders to get the ball to the first baseman. And speaking of our interview, why don't we just dive right in to part 3 of our interview with Coach Sarancik. It was easy to divide the interview into 3 parts because it really was 3 different topics. In part 1, we talked about team chemistry, building ideas. Last week, we talked about the role of the parent and also a parent/coach. And this week, we're going to discuss, or in a few minutes here, you're going to hear Adam talk about his keys to teaching skill development. I put Adam's website in the show notes, so you can go check that out. And email me if you want the outline that Adam put together for this interview. I have that PDF I can send over to you. Email me if you'd like that. I'll surely send you that. And without further ado, let's jump into part 3 of the interview. Let's dive in. The keys to teaching skill development. Like we said before, I know we've outlined it. You're prepared, so I'm going to let you run with that.
Absolutely. Well, let's lay the foundation again. Lay the foundation for teaching and what you need to have before you can even teach, okay? Number 1, you need to have a person, athlete, player philosophy. Before you can train the athlete and develop the player, you have to connect with and validate the person, okay? They have to know and trust that you care about them beyond the game, okay? If you do that, then they're going to be able to handle adversity, and they're going to take instruction from you on, okay, we can do better, and here's how. If you haven't connected with them as a person, then you're not going to get that level of buy-in that you need. And that's at any level. Okay, maybe even more important as a youth player because they're just trying to get familiar with coaching styles and pressure and all these things. They have to know that you care about them, and they have to know that when they fail or when they're not perfect, that they can still trust you with their emotions, and you're not going to come at them in a way that's going to make them feel unsafe. So this whole person thing has got to come first. Then athletically, as a coach, you have to understand that not every solution to a sports fundamental problem is through more sports drills. That you have to understand that it may be something you need to solve off the field, before practice, first part of practice, from an athleticism point of view, or maybe even a psychological point of view. That until you correct their hip mobility, they may not be able to rotate their hip as a pitcher or a hitter. That you have to teach them first how to load their hip before they're going to be an effective pitcher and a hitter. So you have to be able to, as I say, mentally take out the implement, the glove, the ball, the bat from their hand and just see them as an athlete. How do they move? And if you're educated and trained and you're training your players as athletes, and if you put as much time into educating yourself and to learning about the body and how the body moves, you will be able to do that. And then all the technology helps, of course, too. All the videos and things that we have nowadays that allow you to look at the player and see the athlete. So very important that you're able to do that. And a lot of coaches, they've never been trained, and a lot of leagues really don't prioritize that. It's just so sad that they don't take these 8-year-olds and all the way through middle school and say, you know what, we're going to start out and we're going to train them how to do this as an 8-year-old, and we're going to progress and carry that through as middle schoolers. If we're going to have them play multiple sports, then let's train their athleticism in every sport that they play. And it should be a league-wide thing that is programmed and directed and supervised by the league and help the coaches out. So anyway, person, athlete, and then the player comes last. Number 2, and I spent a lot of time at youth practices. And I'm sorry, but I don't see many coaches coach from beginning to end. Coaches make the first mistake. I have a saying that telling is not teaching. You can't show the players one time how to do their dynamic movement routine prior to, the first thing we do in practice, and then the rest of the year prep the field and talk to other coaches while they're doing it. You have to put as much time and effort into coaching the dynamic movement routine as you would hitting or pitching. They need to get better at these things because when they become better athletes, they're going to play better. So put the same effort into that as you're going to do everything else. And even when it comes time to what I call the second most important part after connecting with a player in a baseball practice, the throwing and receiving progression, and that I don't see coaches coaching that. First of all, they're literally doing catch play, which the term I just absolutely hate. We're not playing catch. We're actually working to get better throwing and receiving. But also, I don't see coaches coaching that. They're not coaching the details individually to have those players getting better at gripping, throwing, transferring, fielding, receiving the baseball. They're waiting until we're actually doing some kind of drill in practice before they start coaching that. And yet when they're doing their quote unquote catch play, the coaches aren't there. It's like, what are we doing? It's one of the most important parts of practice. All right. We should be working on our throwing fundamentals, receiving fundamentals every day. This is the way I do a coach. In my long toss program, on the way out, we work on relaxed arm and getting an arc on the ball and getting loose, but we're working on mechanics at the same time. Once we reach whatever our farthest distance is, we're throwing, and it's different for every player and by their ability. It's different for every player and how they feel. On the way back in, we're working on positional stuff. If they're an infielder, we're working on these 6 things. If they're an outfielder, they're working on these 6 things. As a team, we're working together on rundowns and tags and whatever. So on the way back in, they're working on all of the elements of the game that they're going to have to use in the game. Why are we messing up rundowns? Because we don't ever work on them. Right? Why are we messing up relays? Because we haven't had communication games. We haven't been working on all the aspects of relays and rundowns in our throwing and receiving progression. And the coaches are coaching them. So let's coach from beginning to end. Number 3, and I hate to say this, but I'm afraid that baseball has more misinformation out there than any other sport. There's a ton of good information out there and people that can be relied on to talk about fundamentals and the mechanics to do the fundamentals. And there's a lot of bad information out there. And there's a lot of college and pro players that were really good at playing the game. They're not really good at teaching it. A, some of what they were taught is just flat wrong. And B, it's not easy to teach. Okay. You've got to connect with different personalities. You've got to connect with different abilities on the spectrum. You've got to be able to use all of the learning modalities, auditory, visual, and kinesthetic to be able to teach. You've got to be able to use those things. And again, at the youth level, the league should be helping coaches in this. They should be helping them. What are visual cues that you can teach to your players? Even putting a stripe on the baseball to know how to grip it and watch it fly through the air to see if the 4 seams are rotating correctly, watching that black stripe go over and over again. What are the cues that we can use to teach? Know what the good mechanics are, have sound information, and then know how to teach them. Master teaching what you know before expanding what you know. Master teaching what you know before expanding what you know. And one of the ways to do that, I learned this from Ed Cheff at Lewis and Clark State. He just died last year and one of the great baseball coaches of all time. We ask our players to get better every day, but quite frankly, the coaches aren't very good. If you can't demonstrate it, you probably can't teach it very well. Coach Cheff used to require his coaches to hit hundreds and hundreds of balls to his players, infielders, outfielders, every single day in practice. But you know what? They just didn't hit them. They hit them with precision, different speeds, different spins, different arcs, things like that. They had to be really good at what they did. So we're putting all this time and effort into coaching our players to be better players. Are we putting in the same level of time ourselves to throwing, fielding, and hitting a ball? And then just on a lighter side, I have a saying that a day at practice or a day in coaching where you don't see your players smile and they don't see you do the same thing is a day wasted in coaching. So take a turn, go in the outfield, take some balls yourself, go to shortstop, take some balls yourself. Be one of the players in the game. All right. Let them see you fail and how you react. Make a great play, make a mistake or whatever, but let them see you laugh and have fun with the game. That goes light years in developing team chemistry. All right. When coaching the athlete at the youth levels, we need to teach our players the basics of athleticism. They need to know how to crawl, to walk, to march, to skip, to run, to bound, to sprint, to jump, to hop, to backpedal, and to shuffle. Okay. We need to start them out as 8-year-olds at this level, and we need to progress them year after year to get them better at those things. And they can be done in a youth baseball practice in their dynamic movement routines. You can progress them at each of those things. So I just don't think we work on those things and understand the value of those things enough. I've already talked about being able to look at the player and see the athlete. You have to look at your player and biomechanically be able to analyze from the ground up what in the sequence kinetically went wrong, okay, as an athlete. And you need to be able to see that to know how to correct it. Again, the solution may not be in a sports skill drill. It may be in something in their athleticism. All faults and fixes, coach, start from the ground up, and they start with posture, balance, footwork, angles, both in how they set up in their posture and the way they move to the ball, rhythm and timing. Posture, balance, footwork, angles, movement and body, rhythm and timing. You have to think that way and look at your athletes that way every time they move. Okay. Here's some very specifics, and then we're going to get into actually teaching mechanics. Here's some things that are really important. At the youth level, let your players play. Stop calling their pitches. Stop using the wristband and the cards and all the notes and stuff. Just let them play. Coach them at practice. Coach them between innings. Take a mound visit or whatever, but let your players play and just accept the result and teach them how to be proud of who they are and what they've done. Stop micromanaging everything. Coach forward in the games, not backwards. Just let them play. Okay. If you want them to stay in the moment, this pitch, this moment, you stay in the moment, coach them forward. All right. But let them play. Number 2, let's understand that you need systems and you need progression, scaffolding in your teaching so that you're working on things every single day. All right. The old saying that coach is 20 times 5, 20 reps every day of the week is worth a heck of a lot more than 100 reps once. We're not working on rundowns once and expect us 3 weeks later to be able to handle them. Okay. We need to work on them every single day. The things that you expect your team to do and do well, you must have a system in your program, in your practice plans that every day we're going to work on those things and we're going to get better at them. All right. And then maybe as important as anything else, there's that old saying that it's not what the coach knows that's important. It's what the players have learned. I take that a step further and I say what the players know only becomes significant when they can teach it to others. Remember, team culture starts with the players. They need to come together as a unit and learn how to play for each other. They need to learn in life how to be a leader. You may have team captains, but everybody every day needs to be challenged to lead. Different guys every day need to lead the dynamic movement routines. Different guys need to be captains for the end of the practice scrimmage or game sim. Every day, we need to challenge our players to be leaders. You need to start out the season with maybe a command type approach where you're setting the bar of excellence and how we're going to do things here. But as the season progresses, you need to progress to a more cooperative style where the players are taking ownership of who we are and what we do. The one way you do that is you pair up guys that have similar things to work on, similar faults in their throwing mechanics or hitting mechanics, and have them hold each other accountable. I'll give you a really quick example. I'm a big believer in a lot of hitting failures come from the basic setup. All right. They're not balanced. Their posture's not right. Their grip's not right. Their hands and arms are not in the right position. The bat's not at the right angle when they start their swing. I make my players reestablish their batting stance every single time they do any drill, T drill, flip drill, front toss drill. I don't care. They have to establish it every single time over and over again. And we have what I call a go or no go system. Let's just say we're hitting off the tee. the player steps in and establishes their batting stance. If it looks right, it's a go. You can hit the ball off the tee. If it's not right, then we back out and we correct something. Again, chase one rabbit at a time. If you chase more than one, they're both going to get away, right? So whatever you're working on, maybe the grip, maybe the hand position, batting, whatever it is, we're going to work to make sure that when we load in, that's what it should be. So it's go or no go, all right? And you can't be everywhere. You've got to have your players take ownership of it. They need to monitor themselves and hold themselves accountable for doing it. Everything you do, you need to pair your players up, team them up, and listen. Are they holding each other accountable every day for what we do and how we go about it? It's important what the players know. It's more important, can they teach it to somebody else? Because in life, that's going to carry over to them as parents, to them as employees, and as just leaders in general in society, okay? That self-confidence, that self-esteem, whether they're a starter or not, they're building that foundation for being able to lead and to teach, okay? Now, you can either stop there and kind of recap that, or I can go into the specific process of how to teach skills. Now that we have that foundation set, I can go into that, coach, or we can stop and you can recap that part of it. What would you like to do?
Let's do a quick recap because you got me so pumped up here. So I love how you talked about you're coaching the person before the player. I also loved how you talked about teaching them up quality movement. And it made me think of this. Great athletes. So we always say he's a great athlete, but that's an abstract term. That's an abstract kind of labeling. A great athlete is a great mover. Now that could be fluid, that could be strong, that could be quick, it could be agile, but a great athlete is just a great mover. When we're training kids, it's like, you want a kid to be a great athlete, train them to be a great mover. Then I love how you talked about pro players.
You just brought up a great point that I meant to say on the athletic piece. Yeah, you got to coach the person before the athlete, and you got to coach the athlete before the player. But here's this. Have players watch, and the older players do this already. Have them watch a pro combine. Doesn't matter if it's football, basketball, or baseball. Have them watch the combine and listen to what scouts and sports pundits will say about players. They'll say, wow, the thing that jumps off the charts about that player is his or her athleticism. And you'll think, what? These are already All-Americans, multiple-time All-Americans, Heisman Trophy winners. And yet this scout with the educated eye and experience says they stand out as to their athleticism. And then they're thinking, how can that be? How do they get to be an All-American and not be a great athlete? And yet you can tell at every level, you can tell whether they are an elite athlete or not. They may be a good player, but the guys that have the biggest upside, the coaches and the scouts know this player has an element of athleticism that's a cut above. Secondly, again, this may be for college, high school players looking to be college players, but it applies at the youth level too. I just had one of my players come back from a camp at Oregon State. And I always say, don't just go there and compete. That's good, but get feedback. So he asked the infielders coach, he said, so what is it that I need to work on? What did you see? The very first thing the coach said is, I love your feet. I love your feet, how you move your feet. Okay. I remember one coach talking about a shortstop, and the best way to summarize him was he looks so smooth because good 1,000 reps, great shortstop, stick 1,000 more. So again, it's all about the athleticism that stands out right away. We can refine the mechanics. What I don't have time to do is remake you as an athlete. You got to be there already to compete at our level.
Yes. So you corrected me. Person before the athlete and the athlete before the player. It really makes perfect sense, those three in that order. The ex-pro players as great coaches. Are there some ex-pro players, ex-high-level college players in people's areas that are good coaches? Yeah, but ex-pro players, they're typically good coaches, or they're better coaches for pro players or soon-to-be pro players. And I always use this kind of comparison, this analogy, high school teaching versus second grade. So if I took the average teacher that teaches 11th grade or 12th grade and I threw them in front of a second grade class, would they be like, I could take the teacher of the year from a junior class or a senior class or even a freshman class, a teacher of the year, and put them in a second grade or first grade or third grade class. And I guarantee there's going to be a huge learning curve. It's going to be very different. You really want to see the results be there. You want them to coach the person before the athlete, then the player. They have to come from the right place. They got to think big picture, long term, not just a quick fix here and there and try to get your money. And also, just because they are pro doesn't mean they're great for your 9U. They could be, but it's no guarantee. There's a lot of difference in those. By the way, Ed Sheff, I'm a huge Ed Sheff fan, and I was sad to see that he passed. What a pioneer. And I've mentioned Ed Sheff on this podcast at least 3 or 4 times, and he's not even that well known across the youth baseball community. So I got a story real quick on Ed Sheff. We were in Wichita playing at the NBC World Series. I played Alaska 3 years in the Alaska Baseball League. Well, 2 of the years we went to Wichita for the Summer Ball College World Series, and Ed Sheff was the Alaska Fairbanks coach, and I was playing for the Anchorage Glacier Pilots. This was my 3rd year there. We were the 2 top teams. We finished in first place, tied. So we go to Wichita to represent the Alaska League out there, and not the College World Series, but this is like the Summer World Series. And my good friend who's been on this podcast, Mike Hofius, and Mike was playing for Fairbanks. He's playing for Ed Sheff, and those games were all day. Those games out there were all night. We had a 2 a.m. game. It's around-the-clock baseball. So, of course, it's college kids, so it's fine. There was a game that got done, and I got back to the hotel, and I called Mike's room. Hey, Mike. Mike's not in this room anymore, Bo. And I go, oh, who is this? I'm sorry. This is Coach Sheff. And I'm like, oh, he was intimidating. Such respect for the guy. It's like a legend. And I'm calling his room like at 2 a.m. because we just got home from the Waffle House. Yeah, I guess Mike, who had the suite, got moved out of the suite for the legend Coach Sheff. Now, Coach Sheff is from Butte, Montana. My family's all from Butte, Montana. He passed away in Sequim, and my closest, outside of my immediate family, my closest family member lives in Sequim, and it's a small town of 5,000 people, tiny. And now one thing that caught my attention when I was watching him coach his teams, he would have his team in between innings, the defense, instead of just having the first baseman throw the ball to their infielders and throwing it back to first base, he was having them do double plays. He was having them work on the third baseman stepping on the bag and throwing across the diamond. Now, it sounds very elementary, very basic. I had played all the way up to the high levels of college and never seen that done. He was out-of-the-box thinker, and one of the things I think he did so well, Adam, more than any coach I think I ever listened to or watched run a practice or read his articles, he was so awesome at valuing high volume of game-like reps. How can I get, not how much can I talk, how much can I share, but how can I get my kids the most amount of high volume game-like reps? And then also micromanaging our players. If we micromanage our players, like you said, I think that's going to lead to microscopic growth. And we need to set the environment and let them play. The dynamic warm-up throwing routine, I love how you talked about that. And then just a real quick, reestablishing your batting stance before each swing, before each pitch or toss. Last night, I was checking out a practice, and this dad, he was doing a good job, and he was getting them a lot of reps. But the kids didn't have time to come set. They didn't have time to reset. So their swings weren't game-like. And like you said, their posture wasn't set. Their balance wasn't set. And I thought that was interesting. It was just a dad helping out, so it wasn't anything on him. But I would have just said, if you just waited 1 second longer, even half a second, those kids could have got their posture right, their balance right, and their hands in the right position. So I love that point. All right, back to you. Now, I know you wanted to finish and tie this part together, keys to teaching skill development.
Yeah. Let me just say this. When it comes to hitting, I don't care what the drill is, tee again, flips, sprint toss, whatever. They need to use the same entire process for every drill, not just when they're facing live BP. They need to load in, even off the tee. They're not just looking at the ball. They're looking out at a pitcher, and they're loading, striding, coiling, and then tracking the ball to the tee and then hitting, not just looking down at the tee itself. So I've got a ton of progressions off the tee that build on that, what I call pitcher tee drills, where you have a pitcher going from right-handed delivery, left-handed delivery, wind up, stretch, and you go through your focus routine of hat to the release point, those kind of things. And then when they have 2 fingers pointing towards you, it's a fastball. When the fingers are on their side, it's a curveball. And when their fingers are inverted, it's a changeup. And that affects the timing. So if it's a fastball, it's a 1 snap finger count. If it's a curveball, it's a snap and a pause, another snap and a half. And if it's a changeup, it's a 2 snap delay from the time that the pitcher behind the screen, the L screen, is delivering the baseball. So you're working on tracking the ball from the pitcher and different timing mechanisms to the tee. But every single time, whether you have that element in it or not, you are loading in and going through your entire process so that it is something that you don't even have to think about. As we say, you're not doing anything except competing in the game. You're trusting your training and you're competing. But that routine is established in every single drill in practice. And then I love the story about Ed Sheff. I used to do the same thing with all my teams. Between innings, we did something. Every time they got a ball, it was different forehand, backhand, different footwork. And between innings, we worked on different things, like you say, double plays, right-footed throws, whatever. So they were constantly challenged. And my outfielders too. Drives me crazy and watching outfielders just play catch in the outfield. They're not working on anything. There's no drop back steps going on. There's no crossover steps going on. There's nothing going on. There's no ground balls with do or die mechanics going on. Each of my infielders have a different routine between every inning so that they're working on something all the time. Okay, getting to the specifics. All right, there are 6 steps to teaching mechanics. And I don't care what you're teaching, grips, throws, fields, transfers, hitting, there are 6 steps. All right. First thing you have to do is just start with dry mechanics and stationary. Okay. No gloves, no bat, no ball. We're just working simply on posture, balance, footwork, and angles. The proper position of your body, your feet, your legs, your hands, getting them in the right positions. And there you should be looking at them. As my youth player, there's no way he can get to this ball properly because he can't hinge his hips. His thighs aren't strong enough. He's got too narrow a stance. Again, it has nothing to do with the actual fielding, the throwing the ball. It's everything to do with his body and his ability, his or her ability to use their body in the way they need to use it to be able to perform whatever skill mechanic you're asking him to do. All right. So you need to start with dry mechanics and stationary. Step number 2, you need to go dry mechanics with movement. First, easy movement, and then more faster, more intense movement. But you need to watch them move. It is a great drill for coaches to put out some discs, forehand, backhand, crossover, drop step, whatever. Pretend to roll them a ball and watch them move to the ball and pretend to field it and pretend to throw it, just watching their bodies. And you will be amazed at how many flaws you're going to see in the way they go about their business when you're not throwing the ball, when they don't have a glove on, you're just watching them move. You'll see, do they have palm up, fingers down as they approach the ball? Do they center the ball on their chest when they're about ready to break and throw it? You'll see the way that they move their feet. Do they point their toes in the direction they're moving? So I have a thing that nobody else will admit to, but I will stand behind. There are no crossover steps in baseball. If you watch Ricky Henderson steal a base, go on YouTube, watch how he stole a base. If you watch the elite fielders move, they pivot their feet so that they are pointing in the direction that they're going before they're going to load their rear leg. They're going to drive off that front leg, and both toes are pointing in the direction they're going, whether they're base stealing or moving laterally, for example, going after a ball. They're not crossing over their bodies. But anyway, you'll be able to see all these little nuances in the way they go about it once you have them moved, because that will cue you in as to the problems that are going to occur when they get to the ball if they haven't moved properly. They're not going to arrive quickly. They're not going to arrive in balance. They're not going to arrive with the right posture if they haven't moved properly. So stationary dry mechanics first, dry mechanics with no glove, bat, or ball with movement next. All right. Third, stationary mechanics with the glove, ball, or bat involved. Now we're going to look at them holding a bat, holding a ball, whatever, and see if they're doing those things properly with the implement in their hand. Fourth, mechanics with the implement, bat, ball, glove, and easy, comfortable movement. So we're going to keep it slow, keep it simple, and we're going to watch them transfer weight. We're going to watch them transfer the ball. We're going to roll the ball gently. And the movement, first and foremost, I may have left this out. I like to use bare hands first. All my outfielders catch balls and pass patterns using bare hands. All my infielders start fielding ground balls with their bare hands. So when you get the implement involved and you get movement involved, we start with bare hands first. Then we add a training glove as a kinesthetic tool. We call them paddles, or the gloves that don't move at all. They're just the flat glove. And then finally, we go to the regular gloves. Same thing with the different kinds of bats. You can use overloaded, underloaded bats, things like that. But comfortable, easy movement first. Okay. Then number 5 is movement with the implement, glove, ball, or bat at game speed and game intensity. And here's the key that everyone leaves out. You must train reaction as well as action, okay? And this starts in your dynamic movement routines and your speed agility plyometric routines. You need to get the ball involved and you need to train reaction as well as action. So there's 4 components to teaching. There's preparation, things like scouting reports, pitchers' tells and tendencies, things like that. There's anticipation based on the game situation and our approach to this hitter's tendencies. We have a certain anticipation. And of course, the most basic one, we're always expecting the ball to be hit to me. So all of those things go into anticipation. And the third thing is reaction. We must train reaction. If we're slow to react, we're never going to get to the ball, whether it's fielding or hitting it. And the best mechanics in throwing, fielding, and hitting are not going to do us any good if our timing is off and we're not there on time. All right. So we have to train reaction. What are basic examples of that we all use? Hitting ground balls where the fielder is starting with their backs to us first. One that people don't use often enough is drills with your eyes closed. All right. I have a great drill, again, with a wood bat. Finally get to that point, but shows you my age. But you can do it with aluminum bats too, where you put somebody at shortstop or you put somebody in the outfield and you hit a ball not to them, away from them so that they can't see the ball. It's not going to hit them, but they have to listen to the sound and they have to react forward, backward, or which side, just based on the sound of the bat alone. Okay. Back in the day, we used to do a lot of pitching drills in the dark so that pitchers couldn't see their mechanics. They had to feel their mechanics. Okay. So we did a lot of drills in low light or no light or blindfolded. Again, great pitching drill is to take the glove and the ball out of their hand and just have them go through their motion, and you watch their motion with no ball being thrown at all. Just watch how they move. Is it fluid? Is it repeatable? Do they come out of the same arm tunnels, etc.? These kind of drills are just gold. All right. So working up to game speed, game intensity, training reaction as well as action. And then finally, right, we've got to be able to perform in games. So what does that mean? That means, as we all say, learning how to be comfortable being uncomfortable. When you're performing at game speed and game intent, you not only have to compete, all right, you have to compete in every drill. I don't care what it is from beginning to end, and how well you do your dynamic movements, how well you do your throwing and receiving. You're doing your rocket relays drills as youth baseball players, and there's ways to progress that too, but competing on doing relays properly with 4, 5, 6 players in a row, have them compete, not only competing, but the competition has to have significant consequences. Especially in youth baseball, I like to reward the process, as you mentioned before, over results. And I like to reward people doing the process and give them a positive outcome. What do I mean by that? Extra reps in BP, being captains in team game sims or scrimmages. In high school, we used to require that everybody dress the same, right? But I used to let guys, are we stirrups, no stirrups this week or this next game? Are we pants up, just below the knees? Or are they down? Let them choose that. Any kind of positive outcome that's significant that they can get fired up about, make it have a consequence. So the game speed, game intensity, competition with significant outcomes so that they learn to be comfortable being uncomfortable, okay? And when they handle pressure. So let me quickly here just go over fielding a ground ball using those 6 steps. I kind of mentioned a lot of examples as I went through, but it maybe got a little muddy and a little hard to follow. So let's just talk about fielding a ground ball and how you would teach it. Stationary dry mechanics, teaching the player the body posture and the hand glove position when fielding the ball, the wider stance, the staggered stance, palm up, fingers down, scratching the earth, fielding a ground ball from the bottom up, getting in the proper posture. What does that look like? And getting them to feel what that feels like. I mean, when we do our dynamic movements, there's some static stretching involved as well. A lot of players can't do palm up, fingers down because their forearms are so tight and their wrists don't flex to 90 degrees. They can't hold a bat properly with the L into their back of their hands to their wrists. There shouldn't be straight lines from their knuckles to their forearms. That's not how you grip a bat. Everybody knows you grip it in the fingers, but you need to stack your wrists. Look at Albert Pujols, look at Christian Yelich, Aaron Judge and Christian Yelich, see how they hold the bat. But a lot of that, again, is if you took the bat out of their hands and just looked at their hands or look at their bodies and said, you know what, this kid can't get down to where his thighs are parallel to the ground. This kid can't hinge his hips. So fielding a ground ball, just looking at them stationary. All right. Then dry mechanics with movement, teaching how to move to the throwing side of the ball moving to fielding and going through the ball when fielding it. Using discs and cones to train that is really helpful as visual cues about how to get to the throwing side of the ball, how to move using your feet to and through the baseball. And again, just dry mechanics, no ball or glove involved, how to move, all the steps, backhands, forehands, dropbacks, all the different movement, nothing involved except the body and movement. Then stationary mechanics with the ball. So same as the previous steps, except you're rolling the ball to the player and the player is fielding it with a bare hand or a training glove. Okay. How are they fielding the ball with their bare hand and the training glove? Stationary. Number 4, mechanics with easy, comfortable movement. So the ball's being rolled to the player and the player's having to move to field the ball. All right. Forehand, backhand, charging, whatever. I like to start with bare hands or a training glove when doing this. Okay. So that's step 4, moving with easy, comfortable movement and the implement involved. 5, now we're amping it up to game speed, game intensity. Same previous steps, but now the player's wearing the regular glove and the players taking ground balls that are hit to them at game speed. And you've got base runners running or the player is being timed by a stopwatch. Outfielders, you've got 8 seconds to get the ball and get it to second base because it's going to take a runner from home to second, 8 seconds to get there. Infielders, you've got from the crack of the bat to the ball hits the first baseman's mitt, it's got to be sub 4, whatever your routines are, but they've got to get used to performing with game-like circumstances. Need to communicate to one another. Do we got a plus runner here, average runner, or you've got time runner, right? Typically, I like all my verbals to be one word. So are my infielders just look at each other and we say plus, and we got a plus runner here. You may not have time for a shuffle. You certainly don't have time for an extra shuffle. So you've got communication built into there as well as the game speed, game intensity. And then finally, you've got game speed, game intensity, and competition. So my outfielders are working on throws to bases with my catchers sometimes or my pitchers as base runners. We're having base runners and our outfielders are throwing to bases. And then we've got outfielders running and we're making a competition out of it. And like I mentioned before, every practice needs to end with a game sim or a game simulation. And this is the key point. Well, 2 key points. Number 1, you have built up to that game sim and game simulation through your practice drills. If you're working on a lot of butt mechanics and butt defense or whatever, well, guess what? At the end of the practice, we're having a butt scrimmage or a butt game sim at the end. It needs to progress to that game sim. So what you worked on in practice, you're now going to test in the game sim or scrimmage at the end of the practice. But here's the most important part. The coaches need to say absolutely nothing at the end during those game sims and game scrimmages. They need to see what the players have learned, and they need to see if the players can think the game on their own. Coaches all the time say, wow, we didn't play near as well as we practiced. We had a great week of practice and we didn't play well at all. Well, you know why? Because A, you didn't maybe have your practices designed so that they led up to the game sim and game simulation. And at the end, when you had the game sim and game simulation, you did way too much talking. As a matter of fact, if you talk at all, you're setting yourself up and your team for failure. You need to simply see, can this team perform and do what I think I taught them to do? And then you'll know whether they can be ready to play at the level that you expect them to play. All right?
That was phenomenal. That was awesome. Thank you so much for coming on here. And I knew it was going to be good, but this exceeded my expectations by a large margin. Thank you so much for your time, Adam. And I know the listeners are going to get a lot out of this. I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you for having me. And
all right, that wraps up our interview with Coach Sarancik. It was awesome for Adam to come on, share out a lot of useful, actionable stuff for youth baseball. I'm hoping to have Coach Sarancik come back on, cover a couple more topics. Definitely, I think would be a great fit before the spring season. So I'm looking to have Coach Sarancik back on. And speaking of coming up at a later time, next week, a tip about how to avoid training burnout with your kid, with your kids. So I'm going to share with you a tip. This might be my top tip when it comes to avoiding training burnout with your kid, with your kids. This is a proven approach. I've used it successfully for many years. I didn't invent it. It's been around. It works. We'll get into that next week. And also, now that we've wrapped up this awesome interview, I will be bringing back not just the coaching quote of the week. Yes, we'll have that next week, but also our top 5 coaching tweets of the month. I'm going to keep calling them tweets so we know where I'm getting them from. I know they're now called posts. Huge fan of Elon Musk. I like X. I think that name is pretty cool. But just for the sake of clarity, I'm just going to keep calling them tweets for now. We'll have the top 5 of the month that I found out there in the coaching community. I'll bring those to you. I always add a little bit, tie it into how we can use it out there on the field, in practice, with our players, with our kids. And that'll be included in next week's episode. So until then, take care of your health, your families, your close friends. Take this information out there and put it into play. Don't strike out looking, all right? Put it in play, see what happens. Y'all take care now. And until next week, adios.
This has been the 80-20 Baseball Masterclass. Take it to the field.